up, ladies and gentlemen, and all those in between in that beautiful Technicolor rainbow? I'm the Paradigm Shift, and I'm bringing you yet again another YouTube video. And you can see how many times I don't like cutting my stream off to say these intros, so maybe I should just skip them and you could just hit the like, subscribe, and drop a comment anyway. Just do that from now on. Just do it. Yo, do it. Yo, do it. Anyway, it's Jordan Peterson time. I'm going to Kermit. Jordan Peterson gives the best relationship advice you'll ever hear. The very first comment: I adore Ben and Dr. Peterson's perspective on relationships, and I wish I'd heard these wise words sooner in life, and that more young women and men were exposed to them as well. I was a fan of JP for a while, but a few years ago I was in an abusive relationship with a woman I thought I was going to marry. That really crushed me to the core of my self-respect, held my jaw out the window. I had no idea how to break the spell of wallowing in my suffering. Every thought I had was of the past and the pain. I finally decided to pick up his book, 12 Rules for Life. Fast forward a year and a half, and life couldn't be better. Thank you, JP. All right. So we're not going to go to the comments because everybody's literally like, this fucking yak, but let's see what we got here.
The reason our eyes are the way they are, they have whites. That's an evolved adaptation so that we can see what other people's eyes are up to.
Interesting.
And everyone who didn't have visual whites, visible whites, either died or was killed or didn't make. Right? And so I want to see where you're pointing your eyes because you're devoting a tremendous amount of cortical energy to that value specification. And if I can see what you're pointing your eyes at, then I know what you value. Then I can mimic your body with my body and we can fall into the same, what would you say, the same
rhythm.
game.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, the same rhythm.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah.
And you see that in music, right? Because the musicians are heading towards a note. They all know that. They know when they're going to jump up and down in unison and hit that note.
Right.
And then they can play along the way. The music has a point, or you don't even want to listen to it. And it's so satisfying when they hit that climax all together, right? It's like,
yeah.
We got.
I'm going to just say that the first couple minutes of this probably are not in the context of a relationship thought. But that's a very pseudo intellectual way to say we all figured out how to do like similar time signatures. The whole eye shit, like, no, I can still lie with my eyes. I can look directly at you and tell.
Got the point, man.
It's it.
Pseudo intellectualism is just so painful.
I think that as we atomize ourselves in our relationships, I think the relationships break down. That you have to have that rhythm, and you also have to have the ability to.
That's why you dance with your partner.
Yeah, it's.
So what about the motherfuckers that can't walk? Huh? What about the motherfuckers that's paraplegic? Like, what are they doing? Just dying? Like.
That refusal to acknowledge the differences that you have with your partner, and there's a beautiful thing in the beginning of Genesis. So the phrase that's used when it talks about Eve and Adam is before. So it's really fascinating. I mean, the whole thing is really beautifully symbolic. That Eve never receives a name until after they're kicked out of the Garden of Eden. She's called just the woman until that point, and then he names her. Right? He first names her and he says, she will be called Isha, right, which is a derivative of Ish, which is the same word, just add a hey at the end, because that's how he sees her. She's a derivative of him. She's just an object for him to use, and that's why she ends up talking to the snake. Because if you're seen as an object by somebody, why would you want to talk with them? You're not an independent human being, and it's only
that's why you don't want to dance with someone who only has sexual gratification on their mind.
Exactly, and then
that whole analogy doesn't make sense because the identity of property is something that you still push in Christian, like the role of the father in the home. How can you agree with this analogy in relationships if it doesn't tie into the tenets of what you I just hate everything. I hate everything so much, and at the same time, it's like, how do these motherfuckers exist, bro? How do these motherfuckers exist? Like in their own framework and then in themselves. That's why people be fucking with my take so much, because like I really don't just rail these people. Like I'm really about to dive into that for no good reason other than what the fuck are you talking about? That's a very roundabout way of saying, like he just said, that's why you don't dance with partners that only have sexual gratification in mind. But you could commodify that, and they could get the same gratitude out of that encounter as they could in a meaningful relationship. It doesn't mean that the relationship is any more meaningful. It means that they're more direct and clear with their goals. I can still receive the same gratification out of paying a sex worker that I could dating somebody for 6 months to finally sleep with them. The end result is the same. Will the connection and bond be there? Probably not in one regard, but it could though. That's all on the idea of the consenting adults. You couldn't relegate a relationship to those core tenets and then say, because then it goes back into the idea that it's so contradictory that it makes my head hurt explaining it, because I feel in my heart of hearts that like I'm not saying anything revolutionary. I'm literally just like laying this out in layman's terms. Then why did Adam have the ability to name Eve? She didn't feel disregarded because she was just property. She had no autonomy from jump because of the what? Because of out of my rib you shall be made. Her own identity would be being not being cherished.
She sins, they're kicked out, and then he renames her Eve, right? Adam calls her Eve.
Okay, so
because
hold
she's
on.
the mother of all
the first name
this
is
living.
given by who? Adam?
Adam. So he's naming all the animals,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And then it says that,
And that's giving them a reality, a semantic reality.
right? And then God says none of these
Giving animals a semantic reality by naming them,
partners are, and
even though their names only apply to us.
Adam can't find a partner.
Right, they're not suitable.
And he says, so I'm going to give you a helpmate.
You need a woman, not a dog, not a pet dog.
Exactly. He says you need a helpmate, but the phrase that's used is ezer kenegdo. So it's translated helpmate.
Yeah.
What it actually means is a helper against you.
Oh.
That's what it actually means in Hebrew. Ezer kenegdo, right?
So there's an adversarial element in there.
Yeah, because what
You know,
makes you a better
this
person
idea
is the
called-
adversarial element.
There's this idea in neurophysiology called opponent processing. It's really cool. So if you want to move your hand really smoothly this way, you can do it like that. But it's nowhere near as smooth as if you do this. You can be absolutely precise. So you really tense this hand against this hand, and then this one relents a little bit. It's absolute precision. And so that adversarial process, you imagine that women and men are slightly different temperamentally, or even quite a bit different. Well, you're trying to hit the mark, but the mark moves. And so how do you hit it? Well, you hit it with this adversarial process. And you do that with kids, and when you're negotiating in the house too. It's like, well, you think this, and I think this.
And that's why when you fundamentally...
The system of compromise? They're talking about the system of compromility? That's not what that state...
You're trying to hit the mark. And so that this hand, and then... So if you want to move your hand,
A person is the adversarial element.
There's this idea in neurophysiology called opponent processing.
The opponent process theory of color vision. There are color combinations that we never see, such as red and blue. Opponent process theory suggested the color perception is called by of the three opposite, possibly about three pairs. Colors, A process. The emotional internal responses of the A process are fast, immediate emotional reactions. The theory considers it a primary process, may be absolutely positive but never neutral. That process, B process, and opposition is a peak response to any emotion which occurs rapidly out of shock. Last, A and B process is motivation. Every process is an active, effective balance followed by secondary opponent process. The opponent process sets in after the premises. So if we repeated exposure to the primary process becomes weaker while the opponent process is strengthened. Addictive behavior, drug addiction is a result of merit pleasure and the emotional system withdrawal at the beginning of any. There are high levels of pleasure, low levels of overtime. In other words, the emotions of skydivers find the beginners have greater level of fear than more experience, but less pleasure upon landing. However, the skydiver does increase of pleasure and a decrease of fear. Just some with dogs. In other words, he's not talking. See what I mean? Now, I want to buy a kilo of mustard for the memes. For the memes. Oh, damn, you saw that. See, so just the tiniest bit of like nuance into that conversation. What the fuck is he talking about? Because it's not opponent process theory. Go ahead. It's not opponent process theory. It's not. It can't be, because we just looked at what that is. And so it's not that. So what the fuck is he talking about? He's talking about the premise of compromility. What happened?
No, you're saying,
Oh.
That old days. I mean, for you, I'm not talking about you. Welcome to 12.
The idea of compromility. So all of that, what he just said, is bullshit.
But it's absolutely that with kids, and when you're negotiating in the house too, it's like, well, you think this and I think this.
And that's why when you fundamentally refuse to acknowledge the difference between the sexes, you lose the azer connecto part of that. You lose that opposition that's in the...
No, you don't, dumbass, because then the idea of the Oedipus complex literally destroys that and is the foundation of their thought at the same time. Okay, let me talk to you about what they just said and why that's absolute. And I'm going to do this in the most educated but also like funniest way I could think of. The opponent process theory, as we just talked about, does not even go to that. So we're going to go to mine. The theory of compromility. When two forces move, one force in this theory will automatically dominate the conversation, the negotiation part of whatever stimuli they are. The only way it can be guided to not crash, however, is if both the person and the other person on the receiving end of process A, whether it be a decision, whether it be an outburst, whether it be a comment, whether it be an outside stimuli, both need to be guided by the opposite pushback. In other words, you don't crash your car because you wouldn't want your car to be crashed into. Moreover, it would cause you more problems to crash into that person's car than it would be to not. You don't want to deal with the insurance. You don't want to deal with that, the blah, 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 the this and that. Those are the processes allowing you to drive by stopping you from doing everything else. That's so literal and right down the line. However, if you have a bad driver, regardless of sex, regardless of gender or age, if you just have a bad driver on the road, then their process B beats you because you're both not at the same level of experience. It has nothing to do with sexes in relationships. You would then be able to equate that to experience. Again, if all lives matter. And I could say that for every single topic that ever exists on this planet, and it just fits, yo. It's just like if Johnny had 5 apples, if all lives matter.
That's necessary.
That's also see, my wife has a more masculine temperament than me, and she's really low in politeness, which is an aspect of agreeableness, and it makes her quite formidable as a combatant. And sometimes,
are you the bitch in the relationship? Is that what you're saying? Like, masculine traits are dominance. Like, already you're separating that, and you won't give women the benefit of the doubt of being that, all the way to the point of you saying, I'm a cuck soy boy. Like,
sometimes in our life, she'll say things that are so outrageous that, well, it usually makes me laugh. Like in an intense fight, she'll say like 3 of the worst insults you could possibly imagine, and it'll make me laugh. And it's hard sometimes to deal with her because of this more aggressive element. But it was also something that really attracted me towards her, because she...
Jordan Peterson is a bottom. Where else could I ever where else is this going? None of this is relationship advice. This is pseudo-intellectual white boy shit at a coffee shop.
She's no pushover, and she's got this, like, she's got a kind of a knife-like sense of humor that comes out quite often, and so I really like the combative element to it. And that's part of what keeps a relationship dynamically alive. So that's very cool. So that's the first name?
So he first calls her Isha, and says, because God's going to give her his Ezer Kenegdo, and then after the whole element with
and he okay, so God says he's gonna deliver this. What's the word?
Ezer Kenegdo, right? So it's a helpmate.
Right, but it's an adversarial partner.
Yeah, the word Kenegdo literally means against him. right?
Wow,
It's going to be
that's so
Azer,
cool.
helper, against him, right?
Okay,
and
then Adam names
calls
her-
her Isha, right? Because she's flesh of my flesh, she's bone of my bone, which is how a man sees a woman when the woman is just an object to him,
Right, right,
Because
right.
she's mine, right? It's my possessiveness of her that defines her as a human being, and the word woman, just like in English, is a derivative of the word man, right?
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
Ish, which is spelled Aleph Yud Shin. It's the same spelling, you just add a hey at the end, and now it's Isha, right? So she's going to be called woman because I'm called man, so she's,
She's a secondary derivative.
she's a secondary
of me.
derivative of me.
Right, which is how a man would understand a woman. It's like she's like me except smaller.
Right, exactly.
Right.
And then once she starts to bear children, then he calls her Chava, right, Eve, the mother, which is the same root of life and Chava, right? Chai is the same root. So it's
Is
means
that
the mother of all.
etymologically related to the word for chaos? Do you know? In Hebrew?
In Hebrew?
Yeah.
Like at the
The formless chaos at the beginning of time. Is there a relationship between that and Eve's
I
name?
don't think so. I'd have to check it. But
What the fuck are these people talk? I'm just gonna go to my Twitter. That's it. I'm just gonna go to my Twitter and I'm gonna repeat this question for the love of God. I'm gonna ask 110% honest. What the fuck are you talking about? What the fuck are you talking about right now?
he says she's the mother of all living, and then that's how she's defined. What gives her a meaning is
Oh, it's a gimp suit.
the thing that
Confirmed.
actually does give women meaning, and that we as a
And the
society
source
have
of all
decided
things.
to, right, is the ability to bear children, which is of course what we as a society have decided to deride and pretend is not a superpower, and
We as a society decided to trivialize that and make it not a superpower. How? Is it quite possibly by our lack of health care, paternal leave? Is it the idea that we build a society around it's happening. Oh, I'm getting upset again. Is it perhaps because we built a society around the idea of consumerism as opposed to actually building up a younger generation to be able to take on the reins of the older generation to be able to improve society moving forward? We don't want people to have babies, period. That's why we stigmatize abortion, because it's either you're going to have the kid or you just shouldn't have a kid. Don't we got mad kids in the foster home system just being neglected? Don't we literally criminalize black and brown children bodies? Don't we shoot kids? Don't we do that? Don't we just do that? So is it society telling the woman that having birth isn't a superpower? Or is it just hey, we know you're having a kid, but we're probably going to kill him or her when they get older. So embrace yourself for that.
treat as a secondary aspect of femininity when it is in fact the primary aspect of femininity.
The primary aspect of femininity is to bear children. It's how did you ever get your dick wet? Please come to Harlem and say that to a bitch face. Please come over here and say that. I just want to be there. I don't want to record it. I don't want to stream it. I just want the memory for myself. I'm the most selfish motherfucker on Twitch. I just want it for myself. That's all I want, is just that moment. Can I get that? Can I get that, please?
And so it's really, it's quite fascinating. And it's
That's why I like
snatching
reading
kids as we
these.
speak.
Because
Where
I
pussy
taught
is
a
a
lot about
condition.
hero
How did you
mythology.
exactly? How did this I don't imagine certain people having sex, but sometimes you will get into a thought about I wonder what the fuck they look like. And it's where was the passion in that? How does he say his wife's name in bed? Does his wife say, "Oh God"? Questions. Did they have sex once and just got pregnant and that's all he's ever had? Does he Does he jerk off? No, right? That's against his religion. Right? I think. I don't know. I don't know everything.
To my students, and the women would sometimes come up and say, well, what about the female heroes? And I thought, well, that's complicated, because you have the image of Mary, and that's pretty maternal, but in Christianity, Christ is also the redeemer of women, and that's an adventurous hero in some sense. It's so the female situation is complicated, right? Because there is this adventurous spirit, but it has to be combined with this maternal fecundity, let's say. And
So women who can't have children are off the board as far as being a human being. Just we're laying that out there because like there's no other way to interpret that. I don't understand the comments that I'm seeing for this video. I don't get it. Because what are you guys hearing that's so profound?
And involuntarily. Well, what I really liked about Beauty and the Beast, and I do think that's the best Disney movie ever made, was that it's a real female hero myth. I mean, the woman, Beauty, is beautiful, so she's high up in the female dominance hierarchy, but she's witty and well-read and intelligent and adventurous and brave and courageous and truthful, all of that. And she doesn't fall for Gaston, the psychopathic persona. And young women are much more likely to fall for men like that, by the way, than women who are slightly more, what would you say?
Mature.
Yeah, wiser. So they'll
I'm gonna hit y'all with a Sue Surf real quick. What I gotta do, put it in subtitles or something? What I gotta do, put it in gun titles or something? Well, I'm gonna do this one. Dumb bitches fall for beta males. Smarter women fall for alphas. Men who can keep the beast inside, but be caretaking outside.
fall for dark triad men, and that's partly how psychopathy propagates itself across the generations. Right? They can be enticed by psychopathic personas, but she prefers the beast. It's like, well, the beast is the adventure. It's like, well, is this terrible man?
But paradigm bugging, right? I really don't just get up here and start streaming and just start talking bullshit for like 4 hours. Paradigm bugging, right? I ain't just say that. I just didn't explain how that makes zero fucking sense.
You know, like he's rough, he's unhewed, but he's got potential, right? And that's what
I can fix it. I can keep the beast quelled inside. Y'all really think I'd be talking to talk? Like, I'm really railing on this dude because, like, it's the funny shit to do. Like, yeah, it is. Yeah, it is. But, like, really, though, what the fuck? I'm going to ask 110% honest. What the fuck are you talking about? Like, under scrutiny of a little black kid from Harlem, like, your whole shit falling apart. And right now, both of them got enough money to shut the fuck up forever and have no problems. Like,
what really attracts her, and she wants someone
what are we
who can
doing?
guard the walls
What are we
and
talking
make a safe
about right
haven
now?
for the children, but who's generous enough to, who's productive enough to be useful and generous enough to share. And so she civilizes him, and that's, you know, you say, well, that's the female hero myth. It's like, the civilizing of men is the female hero myth.
How you doing?
And the civilizing of nature, in some sense, is the male hero myth.
And to pretend that that's like a secondary pursuit, which is what the society says, that like what we should value is, in a certain way, feminism is a construct of the patriarchy. because
they're completely, and it's modern, guys, because the
So if somehow you're watching this on YouTube, because my Twitch audience is like here, so they have no choice but to look. Did I not say earlier in the beginning about the identity of owning by the virtue of name from my rib? So the idea that women want to break apart from the system would then make them the tougher women in the situation, which then would be a challenge for the men, and the men would be up for the challenge. So the idea of feminism is a form of the patriarchy locked with, because they never got out of that role, the role that your thoughts and beliefs like put them in, which is the idea of the homeowner, you're a birth giver, like. I just want to scream. I just want to scream. It's an 11-minute video. I'm 7 minutes in and it's been 25 minutes of me talking about it. I just want to scream. What the fuck are you talking about?
the notion is, well, the men have got it all right, and all we'd have to do is for women to be more like men.
Right. Exactly.
That's your aim. My wife is engaged in a series of discussions with this Jonathan Pajot I mentioned earlier. It's an inquiry into the symbolism of the divine feminine, because we have a real question in our culture. We have a more elaborated narrative of, let's say, call it masculine heroism, and a more differentiated sense of masculine totalitarianism as well. The female role is still somewhat undifferentiated, and I think that's partly not acceptable anymore because women have control of the reproductive function now. So a lot of this has to become conscious. It can't just happen automatically.
But I'm bugging when I say a woman's place is the home. That's their point. Because eliminating that and then allowing women to have control over their births would give them the ultimate divine energy and divine power, and in a loose structure like the one we have in our society and our culture right now, giving women that much autonomy without structure would lead them into chaos. They could decide at any one point they don't like men for a myriad of reasons and just decide not to want to give birth with any of these men, which could essentially deplete our population based off a hypothesis that they built from the media and social media and stuff. Like, women are too stupid to think up of their own ideas, is what they're saying. How is this relationship? Bro, this whole video is effectively saying, like, punch your woman. Like, how are you not getting that from that? How do you not see that? Like, I was in a rut and I was in a really depressive episode after I broke up with my girl. Then I read Jordan Peterson's book and I learned, I should just smack my bitch up if she acting up. Like, that's what I'm getting from this. That's what I'm getting from this. And I'm not trying to, like, force this into some, like, weird role. Like, what the fuck are you talking about? You started with the whole theory that we looked up had nothing to do with what you were talking about.
Right. No, I mean, that's right. And so at a time when the virtues of femininity need to be taught more than ever, they're being taught the opposite more than ever.
Because ideologies without backframing make no sense. You're being taught, like, you're going to walk yourselves back into it. The same argument that they have about segregation with vaccines and blah, blah, blah and whatnot. It's the same roundabout, like ability to miss the entire point. The autonomy of society is moving forward from the idea of individualistic choice, because a lot of our choices can be displayed quickly and we can scroll past, choose the block, ignore whatever ideologies we don't want. You're saying that will develop a framework for women and not have the control over understanding their actual role in society and what role they play in the home. But wouldn't that make it a more advanced society in which we wouldn't have to relegate all women into that position for them to be able to have some sustainable meaning within the society that we built? Or are we just going to regress back by allowing them to have progress forward and then shame them or eliminate all the progress that they make through another subset standard of society? Bars. Quote me on that. Your favorite streamer could never rap like this. None of them rap like this. None of them rap like this. None of them.
You have to opt into this feature of humanity, where before you didn't have to opt into it. It was going to be forced upon you.
Chat on point again. Yes. Female babies only learn how to walk when a man is around. If you're clumsy, you had no father. And they take that. This is why I really want to do the Candace Owens piece. The reason why I hold off from, and I know YouTube probably like, what the fuck are you talking about? But like, the reason why I hold off on doing these long pieces until like a certain point is because all these thoughts will flood in as I'm like preparing to do it. And it's like, no, I could phrase that better. It'd still be off the dome, but at least I like, don't just get on here and just talk random bullshit. But this is like the direct unraveling of that narrative about Black fathers and single homes. Like, and the whole single mother welfare queen. Like, we're going to dispel all of that from Candace Owens. Like, I get, this motherfucker's stupid.
Right. I mean, as long as you were going to engage in sexual activity, you were going to experience the joys of motherhood.
Right.
And you were going to have to play this role. But now you no longer have to, which means that you actually have to be taught that there's value in the role in order for you to embrace the role.
because that used to be a substandard for women, but after this new wave of feminism, they want to become more masculine, and we don't need more men. We need more birth givers, wafting birth givers. We need more birth givers. Both. You don't see how this entire thing is a misogynistic setup? Like, how could you hear this and not realize it's them like saying stupid bitches gonna be stupid bitches? Like, where do you not see that thread of lining? Is it because I look too deeply into a conversation between two white men sitting in a coffee shop? Quite possibly. But again, we have to remind ourselves, I have 298 subscribers on YouTube. I average in the tens of views. And even I'm not dumb enough to fall for this. So how come so many people like fall for this pseudo-intellectual bullshit? 5 seconds into the thought, and it's like, well, no, that actually doesn't make sense. Because by your own admission of words prior, like, this doesn't follow your ideology, so why do you follow one while professing another? Who the fuck gave you the keys to the kingdom?
And you have to be willing to notice that within without seeing that as only part of you in your peculiarity and not as something regressive. Somebody clipped.
Didn't I just fucking say that? Didn't I just spent 2.5 minutes to derail that point before it was said. I'm really God, bro. I'm really God right now. And yeah, I'm not gonna get that reference. It's a chess battle. I'm your God. I'm your, like, chess versus the saga. Look it up. This shit is funny.
Something I said and put it on one of those YouTube shorts. It's like 3 minutes long. It's got, I don't know, 8 million views or something. And they called it advice to 19-year-old women. And so what I said in this brief video was that, okay, so we'll go for another minute, was that I've worked with women as peers my whole life. So I was part of the first generation, I would say, and certainly in my profession in psychology, there's been a plethora of women, certainly since before I entered the field. So I've worked with women as peers my entire life. And I worked, even before that, I worked in the daycare branch of Alberta Social Services and as a consultant, and that was mostly women too. So, and what I noticed about women, and this I really was struck home to me when I worked with high-end lawyers in Toronto, because I worked with the best law firms in Toronto for 10 years with their best lawyers. They would send them to me and some other people that were involved in this enterprise, and our deal was, we'll increase the efficiency of your high-end lawyers by 10% in terms of billable hours, but we work for them, not you. And so then I had about 15 of lawyers like this come and see me. They were skeptical to begin with, but we got over that pretty quick. And some of it was management discussion, some of it was strategy, some of it was sorting out their marriage, work-life balance. Like, it really depended on the individual, as it should in the therapeutic session. But we had a lot of discussions with the women because the law firms lost all their women in their early 30s. And the story was always the same. So these women who became these top lawyers, they all had the same story. They're hyper-conscientious and very, very smart. So they were top of junior high, top of high school, top of their class in college, went to a great law school, top law school class, they went to a great law firm, and then they walked through the legal ranks till they hit senior partner. No, like blinders on, like conscientious people will have. I'm going to attain up this pyramid. Then they'd hit 30 or so when they hit senior partner, equivalent of tenured professor. And then they woke up and thought,
I have no children. I have no children. If he says I have no children, somebody better give me 10 subs. If I predict this, if it's about the home and having no children, I swear to God.
Professor. And then they woke up and thought, what the hell am I doing here? I'm working like 80 hours a week, 75 hours a week, flat out. Because you don't get to that level unless you're performing. And you get a call at 2 a.m. from some client in China who's got a corporate merger. It's like, you're awake and on it.
Right.
And you put that on top of everything, or you don't get paid $750 an hour. And you say, well, that's the patriarchy. It's like, no, it's not. It's the market.
Okay, I was wrong. That went in a different direction. That went in a whole different direction. How did he? Why would that be the patriarchy and not the? Doesn't that speak to the system of capitalism and how it affects women on a lot? Is this motherfucker deaf? Can this motherfucker hear?